Good morning. We are going to go through a very short message. It's a long overdue message. It's one that I was supposed to put out a couple of months ago, and I didn't. And this morning, I'm being corrected, chastised for not putting out this message because it's not an easy message. So I'm going to make it quick. Uh, who is this message for? Why now? What the church says, and what God says. So, who is this message for? Christian women, married Christian women in particular. Um, why now? It's time sensitive. Um, I'm hoping, since God is saying it's time sensitive, that it's not a message that's too late for some women. There is a teaching. It's God is saying that what has happened is a lot of secular thoughts, the way people outside of the church think, the way the people outside of the church behave, that it has made its way into the church and into church teaching. And some of the things that's being taught or said in the church has given God's daughters, Christian women, it has given Christian women a misunderstanding that needs to be corrected. It's worse than misunderstanding. It's really worse than just a misunderstanding. So a lot of the misunderstanding is around husbands and wives, how wives are supposed to be and treat their husbands. So the word submissive has been taught, that it's almost like being disobedient. And God says submissive is love. Being submissive is showing love, showing concern for your husband. But of course, it has been interpreted as women, do whatever your husband says, mind whatever your husband says, never speak up, whatever he says goes, that sort of thing. And it has caused women to be very rebellious in their thinking. I do not believe, I'm not being told that this was deliberate, but this is what has happened. A lot of Christian women have become very rebellious in their thinking and very rebellious in the way they respond to their husband. So, what in particular is this about? It's going to be under the topic of sex, but it's really not about sex. But what has happened is a lot of women, now my understanding is God is speaking to married Christian women, and in particular, those who have been married for quite some time. I'm in my 60s. I remember when I was going to church before, and, a lot of the church was filled with women. The husbands weren't there. So when the church was teaching, a lot of women were bothered by the fact that they were in church, but their husbands refused to go to church. So a lot of teaching became catered to the fact that there were predominantly women in the church. So what is God saying about married Christian women of a particular age, and now what their mindset is towards their husband and being submissive to their husband, particularly around the conversation of sex. So women, Christian women, have used sex as a means of trying to control their husband. And the other part of that is when you couldn't control your husband, what you did is you held back having marital relationship with your husband. And you justified it because, first of all, he wasn't going to church. You thought he was outside of God's will, so you thought that you took it upon yourself to try to make corrections in your husband. You didn't leave it up to God. You decided, you made changes based and tried to control your husband. So, what does God say about this? God says that's not how it was supposed to go. And the problem is, in order for you to have done this, and remember, he's talking about a particular age group or a particular set of women, Christian women, okay, who have used this tactic to control their relationship with their husband. And God is saying, you are out of order. You were wrong. This is not how it was supposed to be. This is not how it's supposed to be now. But in your mind, you think that this is okay. And God said that's not so. It's not about sex. See, your understanding is you're going to church, you're paying your tithes, you're giving your offering, you're on all kinds of committees in the church, you're doing all kinds of things in the church, for the church, by the church, for the church people, a lot of teaching younger kids and things like that at the church. And God said that is not going to get you into heaven. You're thinking it's about your works. And God is saying, no, you don't understand that for you to have gone all this time treating your husbands this way. Now we're talking about how you've used sex. God is saying, listen, in order for you to have done this, that means you had to have hardened your heart. You have hardened your heart. And in your mind, in your heart, you think that you are on your way to heaven. And God is saying, no. That's part of the misunderstanding. You think that the things that you're doing is going to get you into heaven. And God is saying, no, you are not on your way to heaven. You are not on your way to heaven because you have had to harden your heart in order to have treated the very person you are supposed to be loving towards. So all of these works that you're doing mean nothing. God is looking at your heart. This is a heart issue. So all this time you have been tormenting and thinking that you are doing God's will. You have been completely outside of God's will. Completely outside of God's will. I'm hoping that this message is not too late for some of you, for any of you really. And I'm hoping that no one has passed before this message came out with them thinking that they were on their way to heaven because, they did what they thought they were supposed to be doing. But they didn't understand that their heart was hardened towards the very person that you were supposed to love. Be submissive to. Submissive in love, not having sex just because, they say I'm supposed to, blah, blah, blah. No, that's not what God is saying. He's talking about your heart. Being submissive is about a heart issue. It's not about a control issue. It's about a heart issue. And you've hardened your heart. And that's an issue between you and God. Because God says you're supposed to turn that over to Him. But you've hardened your heart and you really think you're on your way to heaven. And God is trying to make sure you understand that is not the case. So, with that said, what scriptures did He give? Matthew 13, verse 15. John 12, verse 40. Hebrews 3, verses 7 and 8. And Ephesians 4, verse 17 and 18. It's about the hardening of your heart. And you need to understand that people outside the church, people who are not calling themselves Christian, people who are not planning on going to heaven or thinking that they're working towards going to heaven or just being in the will of God, those people, this message isn't for them. This message is for you, the ones who claim they are Christians, which means Christ-like, walk in the will of Christ, the way Christ taught us to walk. That's who this message is for. You cannot be calling yourself a Christian, talking about you're walking in the will of God and treating the very person in your own home. You can't treat them with a hardened heart and think that you are in the will of God. Faith without works is dead. God is saying, no, this message is for you. If you are a married Christian woman, a woman who claims to be a Christian woman, first of all, you're not going to heaven outside of God's will anyway. This is something that you're supposed to turn over to God. Your hardened heart. Your hardened heart. And if it's too late for you to fix that relationship, that's not the issue. The issue is your hardened heart. Talk to God, because you have a hardened heart, and only He can fix that. Only God can fix that. You have to repent. You have to repent. You have to repent before God and let Him fix that heart issue. Because outside of God fixing that heart issue, you're on your way straight to hell. Straight to hell. Thinking you're on your way to heaven, but you're on your way straight to hell. It doesn't matter what the church has taught you and justified your behavior and made you think you're okay. God is saying today, you are not okay. You are not okay. This is not okay. You're not okay. Okay?